From the book Christian Perfection by Fenelon, Fenelon, Devotional Reflections on the Christian Life, Chapter 9, titled Semi-Conversions. People who are far from God think that they are very near to Him when they begin to take a few steps to approach Him. The most polite and most enlightened people have the same stupidity about this as a peasant who thinks he is really at court because he has seen the king. We leave the horrible vices, we restrain ourselves in a weak, worldly, and dissipated life. We judge it not by the gospel, which is the only rule, but by the comparison which we make between that life and the one which we led before, or which we see led by so many others. No more is needed to canonize ourselves and to go sound asleep so far as everything goes which has to do with our salvation. However, this state is perhaps more fatal than a scandalous debauchery. The debauchery would trouble our conscience, awaken our faith, and cause it to make some great effort. In the first state, the change would only serve to stifle healthy remorse, establish a false peace in our heart, and make our sickness irremediable by persuading us that we are well. Salvation is not only connected with the stopping of evil. To that must be added the practice of good. The kingdom of heaven is too great a prize to be given to a slavish fear which only abstains from evil because it does not dare to commit it. God wants children who love His kindness, and not slaves who only serve Him for fear of His power. So we must love Him and consequently do what a true love inspires. Can we love God in good faith and love passionately His enemy, the world, to which the gospel He has given so harsh a curse? Can we love God and fear to know Him too much, for fear of having too much to do for Him? Can we love God and be content not to outrage Him without taking the trouble to please Him, to glorify Him, and bravely to bear witness to our love for Him? The tree which does not bear any fruit should be cut down and thrown into the fire, according to Jesus Christ and the gospel, as if it were dead. Indeed, whoever does not bear the fruit of divine love is dead and dried up down to the roots. Is there a vile creature on earth who would be content to be loved, as he is not ashamed of wanting to love God? We wish to love Him on condition that we only give Him words and ceremonies, and even brief ceremonies, by which we are soon tired and bored, on condition that we do not sacrifice to Him any living passion, any real interest, any of the conveniences of a soft life. We want to love Him on condition that we love with Him, and more than Him all which He does not love at all, and which He condemns in worldly vanities. We want very much to love Him on condition that we not lessen in anything that blind love of ourselves, which goes as far as idolatry, and which causes us, instead of relating ourselves to God as to one for whom we were made, to want on the contrary to relate to God ourselves, and not to seek Him except at a last resort, so that He may help us and comfort us when creatures fail us. In truth, is this loving God? Is it not rather irritating Him? This is not all. We can even love God on condition that we be ashamed of His love, that we hide it like a weakness, that we blush for Him as for a friend unworthy to be loved, that we only give Him a few semblances of religion to avoid scandal and impiety, and that we live at the mercy of the world, not daring to give God anything except with its permission. That is the love with which we pretend to deserve eternal rewards. I have confessed, I will say very exactly, the sins of my past life. I do some reading, I attend Mass modestly, or church. I pray God sincerely enough, I avoid the great sins. Besides, I do not feel sufficiently touched to leave the world and to have more dealings with it. Religion is pretty severe, if it refuses such honest natures. All these refinements of devotion go too far, and are more apt to discourage a person than to make him love the good. This is what people say who otherwise seem well-intentioned, but it is easy to undeceive them if they examine things in a good faith. Their mistake comes from not knowing either God nor themselves. They are jealous for their liberty, and they fear to lose it by giving up themselves too much to devotion. But they ought to consider that they do not belong to themselves. They belong to God. They are God's, who, having made them for himself alone and not for themselves, should lead them as he pleases with an absolute authority. They are wholly obligated to him unconditionally and unreservedly. We have not even, properly speaking, the right to give ourselves to God, because we have not any right over ourselves. But if we did not give ourselves to God as something which is by its nature all his, we should make a sacrilegious theft which would But if we did not give ourselves to God as something which is by its nature all his, we should make a sacrilegious theft which would reverse the order of nature and violate the essential law of the creature. So it is not for us to reason about the law which God imposes on us. It is for us to receive it, adore it, and follow it blindly. God knows better than we do what is right for us. If we made the gospel, perhaps we should be tempted to soften it, to adapt it to our weaknesses. But God did not consult us in making it. He gave it to us all made, and has not left us any hope for salvation except by fulfilling that supreme law, which is the same for all conditions. Heaven and earth shall pass, but that word of life or of death shall never pass. We cannot cut off a word nor the least letter. Woe to the priests who would dare to diminish its force, to soften it for us. Or you could say pastors in these days. Woe to them who would dare to diminish its force, to soften it for us. It is not they who have made the law. They are only the simple depositories. So we must not blame them if the gospel is a severe law. That law is as formidable for them as for the rest of mankind, and even more so for them than for the others, since they are responsible for others and for themselves for its observance. Woe to the blind who leads another blind. They will both fall, says the Son of God. Woe to the ignorant priest, either cowardly or a flatterer, who tries to widen the narrow way. The broad way is that which leads to perdition. Then let the pride of man be hushed. He thinks that he is free, and he is not. It is for him to carry the yoke of the law, and to hope that God will give him strength in proportion to the weight of his yoke. Indeed, he who has the supreme power over his creature to command him, gives him by his interior grace the spirit to desire and to do what he commands. He makes him love his yoke. He softens it by the interior charm of justice and truth. He sheds his pure delights upon the virtues and is disgusted with false pleasures. He sustains man against himself, snatches him away from corruption, and makes him strong despite his weakness. O man of little faith, what are you afraid of? Let God act. Abandon yourself to him. You will suffer, but you will suffer with love, peace, and consolation. You will fight, but you can carry off the victory, and God himself, after having fought with you, will crown you with his own hand. You will weep, but your tears will be sweet, and God himself will come with satisfaction to dry them. You will not be free any longer to give yourself up to your tyrannic passions, but you will sacrifice your liberty freely, and you will enter into a new liberty unknown to the world, in which you will do nothing except for love. Moreover, consider what your bondage is in the world. What do you not have to suffer to keep the esteem of these men whom you scorn? What does it not cost you to repress your runaway passions, and then, when they go too far, to satisfy those to whom you want to yield, to hide your troubles, to sustain tiresome good manners? Is this then that liberty of which you make so much, and which it is so hard for you to sacrifice to God? Where is it? Where is it? Show it to me. I see everywhere only vexation, only base, an unworthy servitude, only deplorable necessity disguising itself from morning till evening. We refuse ourselves to God, who only wants us to save us. We give ourselves up to the world, which only wants to tyrannize over us and destroy us. We imagine that we only do as we please in the world because we feel the enjoyment of the passions by which we are carried away. But do we consider the frightful disgusts, the deadly boredom, the disillusions inseparable from the pleasures, the humiliations that we have to endure in the highest places? Outwardly all is smiling, inwardly all is full of chagrin and anxiety. We think we are free when we only depend on our emotions. Mad error! Is there on earth a state in which we do not depend much more on the whims of others than on our own? All the business of life is fretted by conventionality, and by the need of pleasing others. Besides, our emotions are the rudest of all tyrants. If we only half followed them, we must at all times struggle against them and never breathe in safety a single moment. They betray, they tear the heart, they trample reason and honor beneath their feet. They never say it is enough, even when we should be sure always to conquer them. What a frightful victory! If, on the contrary, you yield to the current, where will it take you? I am afraid to think. You would dare not think yourself. Oh my God, preserve me from this tragic bondage which human insolence is not ashamed to call liberty. It is in thee that we are free. It is thy truth which will deliver us. To serve thee is to reign. But what blindness to fear to advance too far in the love of God. Let us plunge into it. The more we love him, the more we love also all that which he makes us do. It is this love which consoles us in our losses, which softens our crosses for us, which detaches us from all which is dangerous to love, which preserves us from 1,000 poisons, which shows us a benevolent compassion through all the ills which we suffer, which even in death opens for us an eternal glory and happiness. It is this love which changes all our evils to good. How can we fear to fill ourselves too full of it? Are we afraid of being too happy, too freed from ourselves, from the whims of our pride, from the violence of our passions, and from the tyranny of a deceitful world? Why do we delay to throw ourselves with full confidence into the arms of the Father of mercies and the God of all consolation? He will love us. We shall love him. His love growing will take the place for us of all the rest. He alone will fill our heart, which the world has intoxicated, agitated, distressed, without being able ever to fill it. He will make us only feel contempt for the world which we already feel contempt for. He will take away from us that which makes us unhappy. He will make us do what we are doing every day, simple and reasonable things which we are doing badly because we are not doing them for him. He will make us do them well, by inspiring us to do them, to obey him. All, even the least activities of a simple and ordinary life will be turned to satisfaction, to merit, and to reward. We shall see in peace the approach of death. It will be changed for us into the beginning of life immortal. Very far from divesting us, it will clothe us with all things, as St. Paul said, "Oh, how amiable is religion." Until next time, please subscribe for more posts on the old Christian writers.